Hello everyone, today we are ready with another important video. It's about elements of a story. Yes, stories are very common in our daily life. We watch dramas, we watch movies, we read novels, fictional, non-fictional. All these are stories, and these stories have common elements. They have the common elements, they have the common features, they have certain common terms which are used to make those stories. So let us learn how these writers create those stories so that you can also create those stories with these qualities. Let us get started with the elements of a story. Number one, let's discuss the definition of a story. What is the story is about? So a story tells about a single event or experience, and it can be a fictional or non-fictional story. It can be a folk tale, it can be a traditional tale, it can be a novel, it can be short, whatever, but it can be fictional means unreal, non-fictional means real. It can vary from 300 to 15,000 words in length. The novels you see, they are written in a lengthy trajectory. So this can go for long, detailed stories, but it can also be in the short form. The stories, it has a beginning, middle, and end. It has a starting point, there is a middle, then there is an end. There is a conclusion to that. A story creates an impression on the reader. It creates an impression because the purpose of a story is to entertain or to inform a reader. So most probably the writer tries to entertain the reader. So it creates an impression. It can be a comic impression. It can be a tragic impression. It can be a science fictional impression. So impression varies according to the different genres of the story. So let's get started with the elements of a story. So very first element that we have, that is setting. Second, we have characterization. Third, theme. Fourth, conflict. Plot. Climax. Resolution. Point of view. So let's discuss all these in detail, all these terms in detail. Let's discuss setting. What is setting? Setting tells the reader where and when the story takes place. It is very important. There has to be a setting of the story. It must show where the action is taking place and when that incident is happening. So setting is very important for a story. Next thing about the elements of a story comes characterization. Now characters are backbone of the story. There has to be the characters. Now creation of imaginary real people who appear to be real to the reader. The writer gives information about the characters in the story. So characters can be comical one, those can be tragical. We call them antagonist or protagonist. So there has to be the characters within the story. Those can be human characters, animal characters, or inanimated characters. So a story without characters cannot exist. So let's get started with the very important story element, that is plot. It is also in one way the backbone of the story. The entire story depends upon the plot. It is the plot that creates the twists and the turns in the story. The stories that we like, they look interesting to us because of those turns and twists created by the writer in the plot. So plot is a series of events through which the writer reveals what is happening to whom and why. So plot is a series of events. So real thing, which is the middle of the story, here the writer tries to catch the attention of the readers by creating some kind of a twist in the story. So next one is about conflict. Yes, conflict is a problem in the story that needs to be resolved. So there has to be a conflict in the story. Without a conflict, there cannot be the happening of the twists and the turns. Writer cannot work with the twists and turns without a conflict. So writer has to create a conflict, that is problem. There has to be a problem. The problem can be with the character of protagonist, that we call the hero, or it can be a villainous. So there has to be a problem which can raise the issues in the story. So next term we are going to discuss, it is climax. Yes, climax is a point where the entire conflict reaches at the peak. So when the action comes to its highest point of conflict, that is we call climax. Next element of a story we have resolution. Of course, a story ending with a good feeling or it comes with a conclusion, it is always interesting to us. Otherwise, that leads to a sequel kind of a thing. It runs into episodes. It runs into different kinds of seasons, as we always see in different kind of dramas. So resolution, the story's action after the climax, and until the end of the story, the conclusion of the story. So there has to be a resolution. So writer goes for the resolution after creating a climax. The next element of a story, let's discuss the theme. Yes, theme is very important. There has to be a central idea of the story, that on what topic, on what central theme this story is running. So the theme, the story's main ideas, the message the writer intends to communicate by telling the story. So create a theme first, so that you can characterize, you can create setting, you can create plot, and in the plot you can create twists and turns so that climax can be achieved. Yes, so we have another thing in this, that is point of view. Yes, the stories have the point of view. The position of the narrator of the story means the way the story is being narrated and what the writer sees from that vantage point. In what way the writer is narrating. So there are three POVs or point of views. First person point of view. First person point of view means the writer himself is in the story and he is narrating those events. He is telling the story. That we call I and we. Use of I and we pronouns reflects that story is being narrated by the first person. POV in second person means you. When the writer is you, he is telling about you. That is the second person point of view. Yes, third person point of view. Third person point of view means the writer is not in the story, but he is seeing the story, or he has heard the story, now he is telling someone else. Mostly we see the stories in third person narrative, or we call them POV, point of view in third person. The writer is seeing the story, now he is narrating to the audience. So with this we come to the end of elements of a story, but now let's discuss elements of plot. As I said, elements of plot is very important part of the story. Without plot and twists and turns in the story, a story cannot be attractive to the reader. So elements of plot, a plot must introduce conflict. When the writer is introducing conflict, he is dealing with the starting of the plot. So there should be a rise of action. Action begins. There has to be a beginning of the action. The third thing is climax. When that conflict reaches to the highest or the peak decisive point, that we call climax. Then the falling of that action, then action goes down, it goes move towards the conclusion, and that conclusion is known as resolution. So this is how the plot works. Plot must go through all these stages, otherwise story cannot create twists and turns. If you want to make your story attractive, catchy to the readers, it must appeal the plot. It must grab the plot in a way that audience may be attracted to that kind of spice that has been created within the plot. So let's conclude today's video with a short story, and it's that great writers are able to use the elements of the short story with such a precision that the reader is caught up in the action of the story. This is a mark of a good story and our goal as a writer. So we remember so many stories from our childhood because those stories had attraction. Those stories had all these kinds of elements which made them remarkable and memorable. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video and I wish you all the best. I hope you are going to write good stories, create some kinds of twists and turns, apply all these kinds of elements in it. Wish you all the best. Do subscribe to my channel, share and like. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.